Before I get into today's podcast, I want to go back in the Wayback Machine to 2020 and remind us of some really important lessons that have to do with accounting. No, seriously, it's about accounting. Work with me here, right? So it was August of 2020 is when the story take place, but I learned about it in September. So one of my oldest and best clients called me. He was in a little bit of a panic. He says, Tom, we did all the catching up. How's the pandemic working out? How's the family? Yada, yada, yada. And he says, I got to tell you, we just had the best month revenue-wise we have ever had in the history of our company. They had an $11 million August. Now, this is a big company, but still, a big month for them was $5 million. So they had an 11 million. And in the pandemic, I said, oh my goodness, what did you do? What did you do? He says, we just, he told the whole story of his team hunkering down and buying into the whole streaming thing and repurposing all the equipment and going out to all of their clients and saying, hey, here's what we can do for you. And it was a fabulous success story, and it worked tremendously, obviously. They had an $11 million month, and they lost $3.5 million doing it. I stopped breathing for a second. I said, he goes, I don't understand it. What did we do wrong? We've got to fix this because I've got tens of millions of dollars of business lined up. And either I'm going to have to pull the plug on all this streaming stuff or we're going to get this right. And I said, well, let's get it right. So took a quick look at what they did in that August. And here's the thing. They did the same thing all of us did. They just did it in exponentially larger revenue numbers than many of us did, is that they priced their jobs like they were rentals, and they did the jobs to preserve their team. In other words, to not have to lay people off. So they treated the team as free, as that we're creating work. We're going to rent some gear so that these people can stay working, and we're going to give all the gear away. Well, you know what? That didn't work, right? The cost of their labor, I just looked at the numbers for them. I said, look, the cost of your labor ate up all your profits. So let's look at your pricing model. What did you get wrong? What do you not understand about all of this? And it's the age-old story, right? They didn't understand what they were selling. They did not know how to explain the value of what they were doing in outcome terms. Their customers were more than willing to buy. They were desperate for communications, for meetings. They had plenty of money to spend, but my client just gave them the wrong numbers. They could have actually charged a lot more. The other thing is they could have spent a lot less. So it's a little bit of both stories going on here. So our takeaways from this little backstory here is that everything you do for customers, all of your revenue has to be tied to profit somewhere, right? Loss leaders are something grocery stores do when they want you to come down a certain aisle, right? We don't do loss leaders. We don't lose money and hope that we'll make money down the road. We need to make money in all the time. So that was lesson number one. And lesson number two is value is in the eye of the beholder. And the big challenge we have in sales is understanding our buyer's perception of value and meeting or exceeding that need so that we can make money as well. And if you can't line up on those things, guess what? You're going to lose some money. Welcome to your weekly dose of uncommon sense, helpful insights, and tough love. I'm your host, Tom Stimson. The Intentional Success Podcast comes to you through the generous support of Mertz Crew.
Mertz Crew helps top AV companies book quality AV freelancers. Your choice, your rates. We handle contracts, insurance, and payments. You save time, cost, and reduce risk. Start today at mertzcrew.com.
Now on to the show. So in this week's podcast, I want to talk about the numbers, and I want to talk about the people who help you with numbers. I want to give a big shout out to all the bookkeepers, accountants, and controllers that are out there. I'm going to say some things that may make you feel underappreciated. I don't mean to insult you, but sometimes when we let accountants be accountants, okay, we run our businesses incorrectly. And I had advice that was given to me many years ago by an entrepreneur. He says, when you start your own business, I want you to remember two things. Never let your banker, your bookkeeper, or your attorney tell you how to run your business. Okay, that's your job. Okay, their job is to help you in their areas of expertise. Now, so having said that, I've got a lot of experience of encountering and engaging with almost always very well-intentioned accountants and bookkeepers and controllers who are doing what they were taught to do in school, which is not necessarily what management needs from them. There's always value in the things that they were doing. There's, getting taxes right is important. Projecting cash flow is important. But doing analytics is even more important, and most accountants, bookkeepers, and controllers are not set up to do analytics. In fact, many CFOs are not equipped to do the analytics that we need for our industry. But we need these analytics because this is how management makes decisions about what to do. I've got a lot of stories about customers discovering how much trouble can be caused by not asking the right questions of their numbers. I work with companies that have these fabulous spreadsheets. They have data and report for days. They go through these huge monthly management meetings with, analysis, and I'm making air quotes here for all of you out there listening, analysis about the numbers, but it's not actionable because the analysis is not asking the right questions. And let me give you some examples of what the right questions are. Client comes to me and says, hey, our revenue is way up, but we're not making more money from more revenue. I'm going, okay, I'm thinking, great. That means you're not scalable. So your company's not scaling. Because, well, we didn't hire any more people. Okay, that's even more concerning. If you did more revenue, you didn't hire more people, and you're not making money. Okay, how can this be? What's going on here? Well, it didn't take very long to figure out that they did have a huge staff. They were doing more business, but the business they were doing wasn't utilizing their underutilized staff. It was utilizing more freelancers. So they were outsourcing very well, but they had, probably 10%, 15% of their staff was getting 10% utilization. And that's a huge cost, and it doesn't scale. So even as they were doing more revenue, they weren't using up their overhead. So this is math. We just look at the numbers. We say, look, here's what's going on. Why don't you exchange these people for people who are billable? And look how your numbers change when that happens. But they weren't asking the right questions. The data, the reports were giving them good information, and they were looking at it and going, man, this is accurate. Yes, that's exactly what happens. Yes, Tom only works 10% of the time as a billable person. The rest of the time, he's just very helpful. It's like, okay, well, let's get rid of Tom, right? Or find something better for Tom to do. But the questions that we should be asking are more important than is the data, absolutely correct. So I'll give you another story about numbers. Back in 2001, we had a horrible recession hit us, on top of which we had the 9/11 disaster. And for those of you in the event industry back then, that at 9/11, what happens is we shut down the airspace all over the U.S., all over North America. We had to bring the planes down. There's entire Broadway musicals that have been written about this. We couldn't fly, and our shows couldn't happen. We had shows that were completely set up that we struck, put back on the truck, and came home. We struggled to get paid for those jobs, of course, because we weren't very creative about how we did our billing back then. So it was a really, really bad time. And we basically saw all of our events for the next 3 or 4 months vaporize. So from early September until the end of the year, 2001, there was no work. We lost more than an entire quarter's worth of business. Honestly, I think it was about a third of our annual revenue just vaporized overnight. Now, competitors being what they are, we talked to each other. We found out what people were doing to survive and what they were doing about. But one of the big competitors in our industry did something that we all thought was abhorrent. Spoiler alert, it was not. It was actually brilliant. But at the time, it seemed horrible because nobody had ever done it before, because it went against every bit of rental math that we had ever learned. Is they announced to all of their customers and anybody that would listen is that, hey, we want to support the event industry. Here's what we can do for you. We will give you anything in our ginormous warehouse for free. All of our equipment is free. All of our equipment resources are for free if you will just pay for our talent. If you will just hire our people and pay the expenses, we will do everything else for free. And the industry went nuts. They said, how could they do this? This is a race to the bottom. This is a 100% discount on equipment offered to anybody who would take it. And I remember, as everybody around me was complaining, thinking, these guys are pretty smart, right? They're going to take business away from us. And they were offering this well into, the next year, into the, 2 quarters ahead. They're going to take business away from us. And customers are going to try them, and customers may like them, and customers may not come back. But from a math standpoint, what they were doing was absolutely brilliant. Strategically, I don't know if it paid off or not. The economy did recover. We did get back to work. But from a math standpoint, they were creating revenue to cover expenses. So their gross profit on jobs was going to be extremely low, but there's enough gross profit to pay the direct costs that they had on staff to do those jobs. Old rental guys couldn't see how that could possibly work. How in the world can you do that? How are you going to pay for the gear? Well, guess what? You got to pay for the people. Okay, the gear will then take care of itself. So that was the first step in my education to realizing it's about the service. It's about the people. Okay, we need to be making money with every human touch that we put on a job, and the flex money, the variable profit, is all built into the equipment. And the reason we own equipment is to reduce our outside costs. It's to reduce subrentals. We don't need to own everything, but back then we thought we did. We thought we had to own all of our own equipment and have very few subrentals, and we thought we had to have all of our technicians on staff and have very few freelancers. And guess what? We were wrong. We were absolutely wrong. And that's the first time that idea started to get into my head. So let's talk about those numbers again. What should my numbers tell me? Well, what would you like to ask? Okay. New customers call me all the time. And they say, hey, what numbers should I be asking? I said, well, what do you want to know? Well, how do I make money? I said, that's a great question. That's actually the healthiest question you can ask. So first of all, are you making money? Well, we're making a little bit. Well, what do you make money on? I'm not really sure. Well, let's find out. Okay. That's a very healthy start. Okay. I've interviewed a lot of controllers and bookkeepers over the years and say, how does this company make money? And say, I don't know. They said they take in more revenue than they have expenses. Classic answer. It's a simple math question. No, philosophically, how do they make money? I don't know. Okay. I don't know what rental prices should be. I don't know what labor prices should be. They don't have that information. What do they make money on labor? I don't know. Okay. All we know is that we take in money. We have money left over sometimes. At the end of the year, there seems to be money left over. It pays our taxes and we move on. So 3 questions I want you to ask your money. Question number 1, how do you make money? What revenue makes money for you and what revenue doesn't make money for you? All of your revenue needs to make money. Okay. You need to validate what it's making and you need to justify that revenue or otherwise stop doing that revenue. I'll give you a great example. I worked with a company who, was doing pretty well, but they struggled on profitability. They should have been $1 million a year more profitable than they were. And I looked at their numbers, and one thing I noticed is that they charged clients over the course of a year $300,000 for scenery, and they spent $1.3 million on scenery, which means they lost $1 million on scenery. You know what that $1 million is? That's the profit they should have been making. You know what that scenery was worth? It was probably worth $2 million, but they were afraid to sell it that way because it was a loss leader. Okay. The numbers don't lie, right? You actually have to look at them. Everything you should do be a profit center. Well, we can't make as much money on scenery as we do on rental. Well, why not? Who told you that? Where did that rule come from? Right? So asking the right questions gets us into another series of questions that help us better understand how our business model works. Second thing I want you to ask your numbers is, which of my costs of goods sold are discretionary and which are prescriptive? Okay. So discretionary means we're going to spend this money because it's going to make this job go better or make this series of jobs go better, versus prescriptive, we have to have it. Okay. We have to have the sub rental. Now, either of those things you can buy better. So are we using our cost of goods sold correctly? Can we buy better? Can we buy smarter? Okay. What is a normal amount of sub rentals for you in a busy month versus a slow month? I had a sub rental manager who was given bad information by management saying, well, we average 8% sub rentals per year. So as long as you don't go over 8% of revenue, just keep renting. So what happens is in the busy months, he was shortchanging jobs. He was getting crummy gear to try and keep the cost down. In busy months, he was renting gear that they and paying too much money for it when they really didn't actually have to have it. They could have done something else. So he was given bad data. He responded inappropriately. Nobody was asking the right questions. He was happy to fix what he was doing, but based on what he was told, that's what he was supposed to be doing. Yeah, it's a crazy job, isn't it? Third thing, you have fixed costs. Are they helpful? Okay. Is 100% of your overhead important to acquire and plan business? Okay. Your overhead isn't for executing business. That's cost of goods sold. So all of your overhead, all your below the line expenses, and that's selling, that's administration, it is accounting, it is bookkeeping, but it's also your warehouse manager. It's also your inventory manager, all the people who work on your team, your entire sales team, in case you sell something or for the purpose of selling something, are part of your overhead. Okay. Are they helpful all the time? Or do sometimes we wonder why they're here or why are they coming into the office? So that's another important question. If you can reconcile those three things, you will find your way to a better balance in your organization. Now, the reason I'm doing this podcast is because so many folks don't have their numbers in places where they can see this data without doing a lot of ad hoc reporting that no one seems to have time to do, but it's vitally important. However, if you were to set your books up correctly and set your reports up correctly, know how to record data, know how to parse data, make sure your revenue categories align with cost of goods sold categories, simple stuff, it's very easy to pull out your key performance indicators to see how you're doing on a regular basis and find out if you need to make any adjustments. In other words, ask permanent questions of your numbers. Don't ask ad hoc questions. So the ad hoc questions are great. We want to drill down and go down those rabbit holes from time to time, but there's some fundamental questions you always need to ask. But the numbers need to be in the right place. How you look at things and how you set them up is a huge part of this, which is why, spoiler alert, I'm going to do a promo here, why I'm holding a masterclass on management accounting. Now, for those of you who are not aware, there's financial accounting, there's tax accounting, there's management accounting. They're really three different disciplines. They're very often three different people, though often your tax accounting firm has a managerial accounting division or a financial accounting division. So financial accounting tells us one thing, tax accounting tells us another. Managerial accounting is the one that's always neglected. And I want to teach you how to do it because you, as the owner or principal or management of your business, should be the managerial accounting for most of your firms. If you're a larger firm, you've got a 5-person accounting team, you better have somebody on that team that knows what I'm talking about. But until that time, if you're an owner operator with a small management team, you guys have to be the managerial accountant. And I'm going to teach you how to do it. I'm going to teach you where to put your numbers. I'm going to teach you how to forecast so that you can extrapolate how well you're going to do in the future. Because tax and financial accounting looks backwards, managerial accounting looks forwards, and we use the numbers that we've learned in the past to predict the future and make adjustments before it's too late. And that, folks, is the key to making money. So if you would be interested in learning this for yourself, in participating in this masterclass, reach out to me. You can email me. You can go to my website, trstimson.com/masterclass, and take a look at the program that we're having. Check my promotional emails. Send me an email. I'll be happy to talk to you and find out if this is right for you. This event's going to take place October 15th in the Dallas area. So sign up, bring the right members of your team, and I can help you figure out who that is so that you can get the most out of this. If you make the changes that you need to make in your management accounting system, it will help you make money far into the future, much, much sooner. The difference between wildly profitable companies and companies that eke by from year to year is the profitable ones ask the right questions to their numbers, and they act on the results that they get. Come learn how to do it. Anyway, thanks for listening to my stories. Thanks for being here. I'll talk to you next week. If you liked this episode of the Intentional Success Podcast, please leave a review and don't forget to like and subscribe. This podcast has been brought to you by the helpful folks at Mertz Crew.